Chapter 9, December 1906. My head is spinning. The more I look, the more I see. There are people everywhere. Men pulling apart wooden frames, women wiping dust from signs with bits of rag, children carrying wooden boards as tall as themselves. One boy is carrying a sack of furry balls. Coconuts, says Julia, looking down at my puzzled face. Even though I'm bloody confused and frightened, I let out a giggle as the coconuts escape the boy's basket and roll away. Billy should be more careful with those, or his dad will have his guts for garters. Shall we help? I nod and we move closer to the boy, stopping the coconuts with our feet and putting them back in his basket. They tickle my hands and I giggle again. Who's this then? The boy asks. Ellen. She'll be staying with us for a while. You be sure to make her welcome, Billy. She's family now. Family? Yes, and don't you forget it. The boy looks me up and down, then balances his basket between a knee and an elbow and reaches out his free hand to shake mine. Welcome to the family, Ellen. Thanks, I say, though I want to tell him about Florrie, about my family just across the river. Billy heads off with his basket of coconuts and Julia guides me through the chaos. Curious eyes follow me and I lower my head, for once not wanting to be the centre of attention. Here we go, Julia says as we reach a long wooden box on wheels. It's the shiniest thing I've ever seen, painted a deep red with gold lettering and leafy designs. The windows gleam and appear to reflect sunlight, even though the day is cloudy. Not a spot of dust lies on its wood. I go to step inside, but Julia grabs my coat. No, you don't, she says. Wait here. Julia disappears inside and comes out moments later with a round copper tub, like what we do our laundry in. She goes in and out of her wagon, each time pouring more water into the copper from a large kettle. Right, first things first. Kneel here and tip your head down. I do as she says, and she places a large piece of brown paper on the floor in front of me. Now, Ellen, this might hurt a little, but it's important we get any stowaways off you before you come into the wagon. I can't see what she's doing with my head forward and a crown of brown hair round my eyes, but I feel it sure enough. She sections off part of my hair and begins tugging through it with a fine-toothed comb. Ow! I squeal as Julia yanks at a tangle, but she ignores me and keeps going. Her tugging and tearing seem to go on forever, but eventually she stops. Wait there, she says. I stay still, even though my neck is aching and I want to run away. Now she's back, holding an oil lamp to the paper. She stops several times, then moves the flickering light across once more. Good, she says at last. You can stand up now. I stand up and stretch my neck to ease the ache. Well, your head is free of critters, but I'm not sure the same can be said for those clothes. They'll need burning. I look at her wide-eyed. Oh, don't worry, Ellen. I'm not going to make you run around starkers. She disappears into the wagon, laughing all the while. When she comes back, she has a pile of clothes in one arm and a sheet in the other. Here. You get in the tub and I'll hold this sheet to protect your modesty. I go to step in, but she holds my arm back. Take off your clothes, she says. Does she really expect me to stand here, in public, in the nuddy? What if someone comes over? Her sheet will be as useful as a holy bucket then, won't it? Well, this Julia must be a mind reader, for she lifts the sheet higher and says, Ellen, if anyone comes near, I'll wrap this sheet around you quicker than you can say coconut shy, and I promise to look away as long as you promise to scrub yourself good and proper. I don't have much choice. If I make a run for it, I might not find my way back. Even if I do get back, it don't seem like I'm wanted at home. Julia turns her head and I quickly take off my clothes, jumping in the tub before she can catch a glimpse of me. I've never washed so quick or so well, for the last thing I want is her interfering. I grab the bar of soap she's left and scrub it all over my body and in my hair. Then I splash away, making sure every last bit is off again. The water has turned a scummy grey, so I suppose I've done a good enough job. Here, says Julia, holding the sheet closer so I can wrap myself in it. She inspects the water in the tub and, satisfied I've had a good hose down, tips it out beneath the wagon. Julia? Yes? My dress. I wore it to my sister's wedding. Me and my sisters were all matching. Ah, so it's a special frock? Yes. All right then, we'll keep it, but it will need a good clean before you can wear it again. Thank you, I say. Come inside and dress by the fire. I follow her up the painted wooden steps, and the first thing to hit me is the warmth. Unlike our measly fire back home, here a small coal fire pumps out so much heat, I'm not sure I need more than a thin sheet round me. Julia hands me my new clothes. They aren't fancy, just a thick woolen dress, stockings and cardigan, but they're the first properly new clothes I've ever worn, and I'm sure they weren't made from curtains. I'm almost scared to wear them, in case I get them mucky, but Julia's waiting, so I hand her the sheet and dress myself. How about a cup of sweet tea, she says. I'm sure all this has been quite a shock for you. Julia, what is all this? I mean, why am I here? Ah, well, I met your mum in the pub last night. The pub? Yes, and we got chatting. She told me she's worried about not being able to provide for all her kiddies once the new baby comes. Too many mouths to feed, I think she said. Well, the problem I have is I've no mouths to feed. Me and Henry aren't blessed with children, so I thought we could help each other out. How? I suggested I look after you for a while. But why me? There's plenty of us Hardys to choose from. Yes, I know, but all the others are working, aren't they? You're too young to bring in any money, but here with us there's plenty you can do. How long will I stay with you? Julia ignores my question and pulls cups down from a high cupboard. I miss Florrie. Is that your sister? Julia says, turning to look at me. I nod and try not to cry. I'll keep you so busy you'll not have time to miss her, don't worry. Busy? I'm still not sure what someone as little as me can do except go up the odd chimney, and Julia don't seem like no chimney sweep. Would you like to see round the wagon? Julia asks, and I nod. Well, most of it you can see from here. Julia laughs and points to a cosy armchair. I sit down as she hands me a cup of tea. What amazes me most is how everything in here sparkles. The walls are dark polished wood, twisting flowers and vines cut into shiny glass. Red and pink flowers even cover the ceiling. It couldn't be more different from my house in the yards. Every shelf and mantel is packed with ornaments, fine china teapots, glass vases, and not a speck of dust on none. We sleep through there, says Julia, pointing to a sliding door. You'll be on this bunk. She pulls back a curtain on the other side of the wagon to reveal a narrow bunk covered in a cheerful woolen blanket. A proper bed! Florrie will be so jealous when I tell her. A couple of nights in that and I'll be fresh as a daisy when I go home. You sit and finish your tea. I'll get Henry to come and say hello. Once she's gone, I sink back into the soft armchair, and with the heat of the fire I could happily doze off. The strangeness of the day has left me knackered. It's too much to take in at once, and I miss Florrie. When Julia returns, it's with a tall, thin man whose face is covered by an enormous moustache, more like the branch of a tree than the headmaster's caterpillar. It's hard to see his mouth beneath all that hair, but his eyes twinkle and I can tell he's smiling. Before he sits down, he washes his hands in a little basin and removes his shoes. Hello, little gal. You must be Ellen. Yes? Well, I'm Henry. It's a pleasure to meet you, Princess. What do you make of your new home? It's clean, sir, I say. Henry's eyes crease up and a guffaw booms from his chest. I don't understand how a man so thin can make such a sound. When he stopped laughing, he takes my hands in his. Now, Princess, I'll have none of that sir business. Only the law call me that, and not politely. You can call me Henry, or uncle if you prefer, but if that's strange, then plain old Henry will be grand. I nod, unsure quite what I should call him. Julia fusses round us, making up plates of sandwiches which she lays out on the small table. Wash your hands, Ellen, she says. Then sit back here and have some grub. You must be starving after all your adventures. I scrub my hands like Henry did, then sit beside him at the small table. The sandwiches are so thick I can barely hold them in my hands. Chunks of ham and fat scoops of butter fill my mouth, and I'm sure I'm gobbling quicker than what's polite. You've got a good appetite on you, gal, says Henry, grinning at me. I can't reply as my mouth is stuffed with food, and even I know it's rude to talk with your mouth full. How does this compare, then, to your place in the yards, I mean? My jaw aches from chewing and trying to push down food so I can talk. There's no dirt here, I say. Henry lets out his booming laugh again, and the china ornaments rattle on their shelves. You can thank Aunt Julia for that. She keeps a tight ship. Also keeps me on the straight and narrow, the books in order and the show on the road. Fine woman I got there, he says, wrapping an arm round Julia's waist and kissing her cheek. Away with you, Henry. The gal don't want to see that. Julia speaks sharply as she pushes Henry away, but her mouth curls in a smile. Henry wolfs down his food and is out the door as quick as he came. Never stops working, that man, says Julia. Mind you, none of us do really, not till the quiet months, and they're few and far between. Will I be working too? I'm sure we'll find you something to fill your time. What are you good at? Numbers? Arithmetic? Ah, just what your mum said. Well, in that case, I reckon we're going to get along just fine. Julia clears the cups and plates away, handing me a cloth to help her dry. Even the dishcloth has flowers sewn into it, and there's not a tear or rip in sight. I'll need your help this afternoon. All these ornaments need to be stored away. Careful, mind. Any breakages will come straight out of your wages. I'll be careful. Good. We spend the next couple of hours taking ornaments and breakables off shelves, wrapping them in newspaper or cloth and stacking them in boxes. Julia makes me dust each one before it goes away, but my dust is as clean at the end as it was at the start. She won't tell me what the packing's for. Right, I think that's us done for the day. I'll see if Henry's ready to move on yet. Move on? To the next site. Your mum did explain what working for us would mean, didn't she? She didn't say nothing. I see. Well, there's nothing to worry about. I'll be back in a tick. Julia leaves me alone in the wagon. What's all this talk of moving on? I don't have long to wait. Henry appears with 2 strong-looking horses and attaches them to the front of the wagon. Julia steps up into the wagon, storing the steps and locking the door behind her. What's Henry doing? He's staying out there with the horses. Why? We're moving on. We're leaving Norwich. Yes. For how long? We'll be back at Easter. Easter? But that's months away. Julia tries to get me to sit beside her, but instead I climb up onto her bed and press my face against the back window. The wagon judders and soon we're making our way along the road. I can't tear myself away from the window. Mum never said I'd be leaving the city. She never said I'd be taken from my family. Julia comes over and takes hold of my arm, pulling me away from the window. I whack her hand away and press mine to the glass, trying to catch hold of the city as it disappears from view. The castle grows smaller. As we turn a corner, the light changes and drifts from the castle's slit windows. It's as though it's closed its eyes, blinking its own goodbye. Part 2. Nellie Westrop. Chapter 10. March 1910. Nellie? Come on, time to get on the road. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes and the horses will be moving. You'll tumble from your bed and go flying round the wagon. Come on, get a move on. I groan and pull my blankets over my head. A pretty face, all sparkly eyes and rosy cheeks, appears beneath a gap in the corner. No, I say, but Julia's quicker than me and has the covers whipped off before I can grab them. Bossy britches, I mumble as I wrap a shawl around me. Julia whacks me with a pillow. Pot and kettle is all I'll say. All right, what time is it? The sun's not even up yet. Just gone 5. Come on, get out there quick if you need a wee. I scowl at her and shove my feet in my boots. It's bloody freezing outside. A thin layer of frost covers the wagons and trailers. In the gloom, I squat beside the wagon and relieve myself. This is a god-awful hour to be up, but I should be used to it by now. When will we be in Wisbeach? I say, stepping back in the warmth of the wagon. By noon, all being well. Would be good to get there with a bit of light left in the sky, or setting up will take even longer. The lads won't know what's hit them after months of being idle. I smile to myself. Julia's idea of idleness differs from most, for the lads have been labouring all winter and their muscles have had no time to grow weak. It's the way of things here, though. Work away from the fair don't count as proper work, and everyone's keen to get back on the road once more. I'm bloody delighted we're moving on. Julia makes me go to school in low season and I hate it. The local kids aren't welcoming of us show folk, the teachers neither. They stick me at the back of the classroom with a book and hope for the best. The locals tried it on with me once, chasing me down the road, calling me gypsy bitch. Luckily, I've picked a few tips up at the boxing booth, and after dishing out a few right hooks, they didn't bother me again. All right, ladies, says Henry, poking his head through the door. Ready to go? 2 minutes, says Julia. Just got to pack these last dishes away. Give me a shout when you're done then, says Henry, closing the door and perching himself up the front, reins in hand. See, I could have had another 5 minutes after all, I say, and Julia sighs. It only takes her a minute to finish storing the breakables. Out of all of us, Julia's the boss. Not that I'd say so to Henry for fear of denting his pride. Ready, she calls. The wagon jolts as the horses begin their click-clack along the road. We clatter along narrow lanes, a train of brightness among faint morning light. As we pass through villages, kiddies gather at the side of the road to watch us. They wave and cheer, but I stick 2 fingers up to the window, knowing they'd sooner run a mile than be friends if I wasn't just passing through. Stop that, Nell. We don't want them thinking us rogues. They think that anyway, I say. Well, let's not give them more reason then. I give up. She can win any row without even raising her voice. Sit here and help me with the accounts, she says, and I do as I'm told. Julia pulls out a black book filled with neat lines of writing and even neater columns of numbers. They gave me a book of poems to read in school once, but numbers are my poems. They spell out patterns and stories in a way no words can. Reckon we'll match last season's earnings? Let's hope, Julia says, but you never know if Mother Nature will throw a spanner in the works, and depends who else shows up. I feel for Julia and Henry, way down the pecking order. There's the top dogs, like the Thurstons and Barkers with their latest gadgets and rides. Then it gets to us with our shooting gallery. The shooting gallery's a good earner, but nothing like the bigger rides. Through the back window I see Henry's brother Will, guiding his own horses along. Sophia's most likely sat in their wagon doing the same as us. Their coconut shy's not a bad earner neither. Looks like Linmart was our best earner last year. Shame we couldn't get in this time round. Yeah, let's hope Easter and Whitsun make up for any losses. We've got a good run coming up from Easter onwards. It's good to be back on the road again. Yes, it is, mutters Julia, distracted by the numbers on her page. We go through the accounts, which are as orderly and correct as I'd expect from Julia. The roads are so straight, Julia makes us a cuppa without spilling none. I sip my tea and glance out the window. Land stretches as far as the eye can see. Beside the road, tall grass jiggles in the breeze and the fields are crisp white, the sun not yet burning through to the green and brown below. The road mostly follows the line of the dykes that criss-cross the ground. It's beautiful, isn't it? I suppose it is, in its own way, says Julia. You don't like it? Well, where I come from, there's hills and woodland. To me, the fens are rather bleak. But look at the sun, I say, and Julia gazes out the window. The sun is rising slowly, a big orange ball filling an enormous blue sky. It turns the fields from silver to gold. I like the windmills, Julia says, pointing to a wooden building in the distance. You don't see those back home. Where are you from? I ask. Up north, came south for Henry, but I'll never be a true southerner, even if I sound like one now. I'll take you up there some day if you like. Yes, please, I say, and Julia throws me a smile. By the time we arrive in Wisbeach, wagons and trailers are blocking the streets, showmen vying for the best spots in the marketplace. Some of the bigger shows have gone closer to the river. Old man Thurston set up his cinematograph up on the north brink, while Tubby has his cinematograph coliseum over on the south brink. Tubby's impressive show organ is certain to draw the crowds, and with just the river to separate them, Thurston will be spitting feathers. Thurston's had a right old time getting here, so I'm told, says Henry. There's snow further north and his heavy van's struggled. It'll be a race against time for him to get set up. How do you know all this, Henry? I ask. He laughs. You get all the news when you're riding up front, Princess. Mr. Tubby caused a stir too, trying to get his vans over Neen Key. They thought the old road would collapse under the weight. Lucky for him it didn't. Through the window I see horses, wagons, people milling about, all misty under the smoke of traction engines what pull the heaviest vans along. Clark's got himself a good spot, setting up his kiddies roundabout opposite Tubby, and Cheeseman has his shooting gallery beside it. Henry won't be pleased. Cheeseman is competition. Henry would prefer it if there was just one shooting gallery in town. I've heard talk there's 7 shooting galleries here this year, Henry calls through. Julia frowns, shillings and pennies falling off the hoped-for taking she holds in her head. Who else is here apart from Cheeseman? Williams, Knight, Parking, Holmes and Marshall. Bloody hell, says Julia, and I giggle. With all the big earning spots gone, we wait our turn and pull the wagon up beside a grand stone building. But the marketplace suits us well, for it's a perfect rectangle and our wagons lie around its edges. Shows, stalls and rides in the middle. Our wagons are a barrier, a fortress huddled tight against invaders. It's good to be close to others, for the townsfolk aren't always friendly. In fact, they're often not. Last year in Yarmouth, a gang of lads started a ruckus after closing. Poor old Henry had a shiner for 2 weeks, black, purple, then yellow and a moon beneath his eye. Will fared worse. He lost his front tooth. Now when he talks he whistles. Everyone's taken to calling him Loco, because he sounds like a locomotive pulling into a station. I'm off out for some supplies, says Julia, pulling on the velvet coat she wore the first time we met. I quickly learnt that her finery only comes out for associations with flatties, normal folk what live dull lives away from the fair. Within the safety of our fair family, she wears clothes more suited to the endless hours she works. She's still beautiful, though. A handsome woman, is what Henry calls her, but that makes me think of a man, and Julia's as ladylike as they come. She don't even curse as much as me. Not that she don't know the words. I've heard her curse at flatties what tried to rip her off, and they're always surprised by the filthy words coming from a pretty mouth. Need some help? Yes, all right, but smarten yourself up a bit. We don't want no trouble. I want to tell her I'm already smart, but looking down I see crumples in my clothes from the journey, and my hair needs a good brush. I've still not got used to having a fancy mirror to see into. Habit still makes me want to find a window for my reflection. Come here, she says, and pulls me in front of the mirror. I admire my reflection in the perfect circle of the glass. Someone has taken the trouble to carve leaves and vines across it. Whoever did it was smart, for it still leaves plenty of space for my reflection between the leaves. Julia stands behind me and runs a brush through my tangles. She's let me grow my hair long, and I don't look like a boy no more. This is my favourite thing me and Julia do, brush each other's hair. I joke with her about the white that's creeping into her blonde. She teases me about my tangles. I'd love hair like Julia. It flows down her waist, all shiny golden waves, and the white streaks make her look more glamorous, if that's possible. You'll do, she says, turning me round. I reach up, kiss her on the round cheek, and she smiles. None of your cheek while we're out, all right? I don't want no trouble. Trouble. It's one of the few clouds what hangs over our fair family. Trouble from locals, trouble from officials in suits, but mostly trouble from the law. If there's ever a spot of bother, you can guarantee it'll be us what's to blame. The gaff lads, well, they're a slippery bunch, but us true fair folk, we stay the right side of the law. And I'll punch anyone in the nose what says otherwise. See you in a while, Henry. We're just nipping for some supplies, says Julia. Don't be too long. There's a lot to do here. Well, I've got Nellie with me, and if she starts her bartering, we could be a while. Henry laughs and walks over to Will, who's wrestling a large piece of iron from his trailer. Julia leads me through the scene of work and excitement. She knows everyone, and everyone knows her. All right, Julia, escaping the work, are you? Ah, Bobby, chance would be a fine thing. Even the great Mr. Thompson's crossed the river and doffs his cap as we walk past. His wife gives him an elbow as his eyes follow Julia through the fair. All the fellows are looking at you, I say. It must be the coat. Or it's 'cause you're so pretty. Julia laughs and puts her arm round my shoulder. Well, they can look all they want, but Henry's the only one who can touch. When you're older, don't be letting lads near you till you find a good un. They're not worth the bother they bring. I nod, finding it hard to imagine ever wanting to spend much time around stinky boys. I don't mind the fair lads. They're a fun little bunch, but only for getting up to mischief, not for touching. We turn left out of the market square and onto the high street. Giant brick buildings filled with hundreds of windows tower above the wide road. The fair always brings excitement along with it, and several times I catch tidbits of conversations. What ride will you go on first? Have you seen the pigs on the roundabout this year? Let's meet at 5 and grab a bite to eat once we're there. I hear grumbles too. People complaining we'll fill the pubs, leave a mess behind us, block up the streets. 2 of those may well be true, but we always leave the place as we found it. We're not the ruffians they make out. Julia asks me to wait outside while she heads into the butcher's. From the doorway, I hear the shopkeeper attempting daylight robbery. I step inside and knock him down by a shilling. Julia leaves the shop red-faced and rushes me to the grocer's, telling me she can manage just fine by herself. With her basket full, we head back to the fair. Henry and Will are standing by our wagon and they don't look happy. Everything all right? Julia asks, putting her basket down on the front step. Bloody cheek of it. You seen what they're charging for rent this year? Will says. No. What is it? Nigh on £10. But that's madness, says Julia. How can they justify charging that much? Because they hold the power and we don't, says Will. I don't know who they are, but I don't like the sound of them. Poor Henry looks like he might cry, and Will's all red in the face, huffing and puffing and clenching his fists. You know, says Henry, back when Dad had the stall, it was £26 5 for the whole fair, each traveller paying no more than a few shillings for their spot. Now all us stallholders are each paying through the nose. Let's hope we draw the crowds then, says Julia, or it will be a very bad start to the year. Chapter 11. March 1910. We wake early on Saturday. This should be our best trading day. Henry's heard trains have been laid on from Cambridge, and between them, the townsfolk and folk from surrounding villages, should be a good day of takings. I pull the velvet curtain away from the window and peek outside. Rain! I call through to Julia and Henry. I hear them groan from behind their door. How heavy? Says Henry, and I check again. Not too bad, but the sky don't look promising. Bloody hell, that's all we need. The sliding door opens and Henry comes out, greying hair sticking up in tufts, pulling on a jumper. He opens the wagon door and a blast of freezing air whips through. I pull my blankets tighter. Kneel by your bed and say some prayers, Nell. We're going to need them. By 10, the rain is hammering on our wagon roof like someone's pelting marbles from the sky. By lunchtime, when Henry leaves to get set up, the rain has turned to snow. Julia's face is pinched. If the weather don't improve, we'll be on a knife edge, hanging between failure and success, and that's not somewhere we want to be. I'm off to mind the stall, says Julia. Want me to help? No, if the weather clears, we'll need you later. Get some rest, and if you can, try to stay warm. All right, I say, gathering up a hat, scarf and gloves so Julia won't be cold. Thank you, she says and heads into the snow. I turn my hand to a bit of cleaning, then a bit of mending, but it's not long till I'm restless. My head pokes out the door and a fat blob of snow lands on my nose. My mind turns to our snowy bus ride to the morgue on Barrack Street, and I shake my head to push the memory away. The new baby must be a proper boy now. 4 years old he'll be. I hope I meet him one day. Last time I saw Florrie, she told me he's a darling kiddie, all smiles and cheer. I hope life at the yard don't knock that cheer from him. My heart twists as I think of Florrie, but I wouldn't swap my life now for my life then if you paid me £100. It does me no good to think of the yard, so I wrap up warm and head into the snow. It's a strange sight, bright canvas lying under a blanket of white, wagon windows covered in ice. I shiver and pull my collar up against the freezing March wind. Saturday is market day, but the stallholders are miserable as snow swirls around their stalls. This type of weather's not unusual for March, but we all hope and pray fine days will bless us while the fair's on. The refreshment stands are tempting. I fancy some gingerbread from Suet's, but they'll make me pay full price. Most of the gaff lads know me, and they'll let me on the rides and stalls for free. May as well make the most of it. First, I head for Richard's cakewalk. There's no need to queue, for only a handful of people want a cakewalk in the snow. The gaff lad hands me my ticket with a wink. Number 6. A large horned gramophone crackles into action and I begin dancing round the squares laid out on the rug. Everyone's grateful for the chance to move and warm up a bit, and we're all disappointed when the music stops. 6, the gaff lad calls. I check the ticket in my hand. I've won! I go to collect my prize, but the gaff lad shakes his head. Seems my free ticket was as much as I could hope for. Next, I head to Bosworth's bicycle roundabout. Again, the gaff lad lets me on with nothing more than a wink. I climb aboard my bicycle, fixed to a metal frame. How Sam and Jack would laugh if they could see me now. At least there's no chance of me falling off. My legs can just about reach the pedals, though I reckon it will be the chaps what get us moving. I'm right. Keen to give a show of strength, the fellows stand on their pedals and push as hard as they can. Soon we're whizzing round like nobody's business, and even the wet lumps of snow can't stop my hair flying behind me. Time, calls the gaff lad, and although I'd like another turn, I don't want to push my luck. I head closer to the river and find myself at Neen Quayside and the forbidden bridge that Tubby mistakenly drove his vans across. Here I find the famous Prince Samunda and his hoopla. I shiver, and it's down to excitement rather than cold, for I've never seen a prince or a black man before. Prince Samunda is legend in our fair circles. They say he's an illusionist, so why he's now running a hoopla I can't say. Folks say he was in trouble with the law a while back, for some claimed he was swindling people, making it impossible to win prizes. They reckon over 600 hoops got pitched with only 20 prizes won. By all accounts, he gave a right good show at the courthouse, handing out hoops for them to try and proving it was skill and skill alone that could win a man a prize. The judge let him off, which is good, or he wouldn't be here. Julia said she read a while back that he'd climbed a ladder made of sharp swords in his bare feet. Henry said Prince Samanda is the best illusionist in the country and travelled with Barnum and Bailey in his youth. I walk over to his stall and a tall man beside it turns round. It's impossible not to stare, for he's the most handsome man I've ever seen. His dark eyes twinkle at me and his mouth spreads into a grin, showing a row of perfect white teeth. Mum would kill for teeth like those. "Hello, miss. You're a tough one, out in this weather. Come to try your luck on the rings?" "Yes, your highness." Prince Samanda lets out a laugh that booms through the fair and bounces off the stalls around him. "So, you know who I am then?" "Yes, your highness." He laughs again. "Read about me in the paper, did you?" I think he's teasing me, but I can't be sure. "No, you're the talk of the fair, that's all." "Ah, so you're with the fair folk, are you?" "Yes." I hold my hands behind my back and pinch myself. Why am I feeling like a timid mouse? I'm not usually a bloody scaredy cat. "Who are your parents? Maybe I know them." How do I answer this? Well, I live with Julia and Henry Westrop." "Well, everyone with eyes in their head knows Julia. I didn't think they had children." "They do now." "That's so. What's your name, love?" "Nellie." "Well, Nellie, it sounds like you have a story to tell, and I like people with stories. Come here and try your luck with my hoops." I reach into my pocket and hold out a shilling. Instead of taking it, his hand reaches up behind my ear and pulls out another shilling. "You should be more careful with your money, love," he says, and I notice the shilling in my hand is gone. "Here," he says, handing me back my coin. "On the house. It's not like I'll be making much today anyway." "Thank you." He hands over 3 hoops and I position myself in front of the stall. It's brightly lit with oil lamps and sparkles against the grey and white day. Wooden blocks sit on a tabletop, each holding a prize. I eye them up. I'd like to nab one with a pile of coins, but the blocks holding toys and sweets look easier. My first 2 goes are way off. On my third, the hoop wobbles and looks like it will go round the block, but it spins again and misses. "Have one more go," he says, handing me another hoop. Success! On my 4th try, the hoop lands neatly round a small box of bonbons. "Thank you," I say, popping a bonbon in my mouth and offering him the box. He takes one and asks me to call again during the week. "I will," I promise. But if the weather picks up, I doubt I'll be able to get anywhere near his stall. It must be a couple of hours I've been out, for the snow has soaked through my coat and I can't stop shivering. I need to get inside or I'll catch a chill and be no use to anyone. Across the river lies Thurston's cinematograph. I know I should go home, but the lights and sounds from across the river tempt me, and I decide to stay out a little longer. Well, what a treat lies in wait for me at Thurston's. They're showing a new film all about a Russian man being arrested and his journey to Siberia. It makes Wisbeach seem like the tropics. It takes my mind off the cold. I watch as a man's daughter follows her father, saves the governor's son from a precipice and gets her dad released. I'm not sure I'd travel all the way to Siberia for my dad. Despite my gloves, I've lost all feeling in my hands. I rub them together, but it does no good. The wagon's fire is calling to me and I make my way back. There are many temptations on the way. Tubby's show of Richard III, a picture display of 2 Chinamen with their pigtails tied together, Thurston's motor car roundabout, Mr. Westwood with his giant son and daughter. Darkness is setting in, and amid the snow the river looks beautiful. Coloured lights reflect on the water, and the steam from the traction engines make the place look magic. Rides and stalls hide all the town's buildings, and I could be walking through any town in the country. A few people are milling about, but nothing like what we'd usually get on a Saturday. Back at the wagon, Julia has a stew bubbling on the stove, and I kneel by the fire to warm my hands. "Goodness me, what have you been up to? You're near enough frozen to death." I just need to warm up a bit, then I'll be fine. Bloody hell, my teeth are chattering that much I'm worried they might fall out. Oh, Nellie, what am I going to do with you? You better not come down with a cold or I'll have your guts for garters. Sorry, I say. It's just I rarely get time to explore and there's some bloody wonderful sights here. You're a fool, Nellie Westrop, says Julia, but she's smiling and begins peeling my snow-soaked clothes from my frozen skin. She wraps me in blankets and towels my hair till it's almost dry. Tea? I nod my head. She brings me a fresh cup and sits me in the chair by the fire. You look just like the poor mite who came into our wagon all those years ago. How you've changed since then. All thanks to you, I say. I've taken Julia aback, for although we're loving towards one another, we don't speak it out loud. Well, Nellie, you know what? You've changed me too, for the better. She sits on the floor beside me, head in my lap, and I run my fingers through her beautiful hair. I've never said this to you, but not being able to have children of my own made me both sad and angry. I'm not sure I was a very nice person back then. You've brought a happiness to my life that I never thought I'd have. I'm not sure what to say to that, so we sit in silence until the stew bubbles over the pot and the moment passes. Not long after, Henry opens the door, shaking snow off himself and taking off his boots before stepping inside. You got time to eat? Julia asks. Sadly, looks like I've all the time in the world. I'll go out again after, but I think the weather's scared most folks away home. Let's hope it's cleared by morning. Chapter 12. March 1910. It may be the day God rested, but he's been busy with the weather, for on Sunday morning the skies are clear and the snow is quickly melting. The ground will be muddy once it thaws, but a bit of mud never put anyone off. Things are looking up. We'll not be opening till later, but the local vicar is putting on a special service for us travellers, and Henry says we should go. We don't normally go to church, and despite Henry's insistence I say my prayers each night, I'm not sure how much store he places in them. But apart from anything, a gathering, whether religious or not, is a chance to talk business, and no showman will miss that. The service is being held at Tubby's Coliseum. We leave early to be sure a good position, and it's as well we do, for there must be over 800 travellers and hangers-on, all come out for the occasion. Tubby's Coliseum is legendary. He was one of the first to take the cinematograph to the fair by all accounts. He's an excellent showman, is Tubby. Even from the far side of the fair we often hear the squeals of laughter as he makes someone in the audience sing a song while holding a real live pig. If they don't laugh, they get a prize, but I doubt many manage that. He's lent his orchestra for the occasion, and it's a fine sound ringing out across the town as the huge crowd belt out the hymns they all learnt as children. The vicar gives a sermon titled Travellers Ever. It's a smart move on the vicar's part, for it goes down very well and makes him friend and ally to all the fair folk. The Coliseum's open-sided, but we're all kept warm, crammed together like ants, and all are merry. People linger after, having a welcome chance to share news and do a bit of business, despite it being a holy day. Both Henry and Julia are in good spirits as we walk back to the wagon, for the service feels like an omen of good days to come. We head straight to the shooting gallery. I help peel back the canvas and prop up the awning while Henry cleans and readies the rifles. Our shooting gallery is a sight to behold. It stretches up 15 feet and the panels that make up the front are painted in bright swirling patterns of red, green and gold. At the top, letters spell out A. Westrop and Sons, a sign not changed since the days of Henry's father. Most of the targets are clay pipes and bottles, but Henry is steadily adding in brightly painted metal animals to liven things up even more. The crowds trickle in from early afternoon. It's bloody chilly, but folks have wrapped up warm and seem in the mood for a bit of fun. By early afternoon, the fair is jam-packed with bodies. Walk up, I yell. Come to Westrop's, the finest shooting gallery in the East. Only £half for 5 goes and plenty of prizes to be won. My patter draws the crowds, and soon they're lining up for their turn. Henry and Julia work on either side of the counter, checking guns are loaded properly and it's safe as can be. No one wants no accidents, not just for the sake of the flatties, but for our own. An accident would see us out of business and in the poorhouse quicker than you could say, load and fire. Henry will often talk of reports he's heard of accidents. A young lad was killed up in Scotland a few years back after a careless attendant set off a loaded gun while cleaning it. A girl got shot in the eye after her friend messed around with a loaded gun. We don't want nothing like that happening here. My job is the takings. It didn't take long for Julia and Henry to realise I was quick with my numbers and trust me enough to be in charge of the money. They trust me far more than any gaff lad. The gaff lads go in for a bit of what we call tapping. They got a sneaky system going, quite clever really. Take the money, count out the change and hold a couple of coins back when they pass it to the flatty. You'd think the flatties would notice, but the gaff lads are smart. They count out the change in one hand, in full view of the customer. Next, they move the coins into their other hand, holding a couple back when they place it in the flattie's palm. With all the excitement around, it's rare they get spotted. All the showmen know the gaff lads' schemes, but because they're quick and clever, more often than not they get away with it. Since they got me, Julia and Henry don't need no gaff lad helping. Good for them, I say. The gaff lads think they're the bee's knees, prancing round in their wacky clothes, chatting up the poor girls what fall for their charms. When I'm older, if I ever got mixed up with a gaff lad, I reckon Henry would kill me. Hours pass quickly and I'm in my element. Here, I'm free to use as much cheek as I like, so long as it don't get too rude. The flatties love my spiel. They walk up, seeing a sweet little girl, then get the shock of their lives what comes out of my mouth. I also love the coins what come in. For hours on end I have numbers swirling in my head, arithmetic after arithmetic as I keep a close eye on the takings. I never give the wrong change. Honesty is an important part of our setup. If people trust us, they'll come back to us again. If we swindle them, a bad reputation can follow you round the country like a stray dog. It's 10 before we shut up shop for the day. Everyone's tired and happy. It's been a good day's takings, and if it carries on like this, we'll soon make up for our awful first day. We've just sat down for a cuppa when we hear a hollering from outside. Henry pulls back the curtains and frowns as a gang of chaps runs past our wagon. Bloody local lads, he mutters. Can't handle their ale. They'd better not make trouble for us. He sits back down and keeps glancing out of the window. Henry, leave it. Please don't go out there, says Julia. Don't you worry, love. I'm not giving the law any ammunition. We'll stay in here till they get fed up and return home. But the lads don't return home. We watch through the window as they stumble their way round the sleeping fair, throwing bottles at stalls and sneaking under canvas what protects the rides. A few wagon doors open and showmen step out. No one wants no trouble, but nor can they sit back as their livelihoods get wrecked. Bloody hell, Will's out, says Henry, opening the door and calling his brother over. Don't get involved, Will. It's not worth the bother. You seen them, Henry? Can you stand by while they run amok? They'll put us out of business if we do nothing. And getting in jail will put us out of business too. The law will understand. Really? Don't be such a bloody idiot, Will. It's only a few years back those Scottish showmen fired at the crowd from their shooting gallery after some dispute or other. The law think we're all the same. They won't be taking our side, believe me. Stay well out of it, Will. But Will shakes his head and disappears off between two rides. A good number of the show folk are out now. Big, burly men hold the flatties back, but the flatties are slippery as fish. They wriggle free from strong arms and continue their rampage through the fair. Suet's gingerbread stall gets hit, the canvas top torn and flapping drunkenly from its pole. Other stalls meet the same fate, and I look on as Will rushes over to a flatty and gives him a good crack on the nose. The flatty's friends come to his aid, and it's not long before the whole thing has descended into an all-out brawl. It takes the ringing of a bell to break through the madness, and men uncurl themselves from one another, bleeding and clutching their ribs. 2 strong horses arrive, dragging a police carriage behind them. There's only 2 constables, so they can't be too worried about the upset. I can't hear what the law are saying from over here, but they seem to be getting the flatty's story first. The one with the bloody nose points across at Will, and a constable makes a note in his little book. They let the flatties off lightly, for the law's not been here 5 minutes before they all skulk away. Now I see them turning their attention to our folk. The men huddle together, putting on a united front, but the law don't seem worried. They drag Will from the crowd and bundle him into their carriage. I may not have been able to hear the policemen, but there's no trouble hearing our men. Their curses ring out through the air long after the police carriage has left for the jail. I have to go and help him, says Henry. Are you sure? Do you even know where they've taken him? Says Julia. No, but I can find out. I can't leave him to fight this alone. He was only defending himself, and I'm a witness to that. And they'll think you're a reliable witness, will they? Who knows, but I'm better than no witness. Julia sighs, but I stay quiet. I can be gobby at times, but I know when to hold my tongue. This is serious. This is grown-up business. Julia wraps her arms round Henry, kisses him, then he disappears into the night. After he's gone, we wait up a while. The clock on the dresser chimes midnight and we decide it's silly us all being tired and make our way to bed. Neither of us sleep well. I hear Julia tossing and turning from behind her thin door, and dreams of cops and robbers break my sleep. At 5 we get up, and I sit at the table wrapped in a blanket while Julia stokes the fire. Tea? Silly question. She manages a smile, but it quickly slips back into a frown. I fill the kettle from a bucket and wait for it to boil. The sound of bubbling water is better than quiet. I yawn, and my breath pours out like a cloud. Bloody hell, it's freezing in here, I say, and Julia fetches me a second blanket. The kettle whistles and I make us both a warming cup. Steam rises as we warm our hands on the china. It's black as pitch outside, but we both take turns to glance out of the window. The sky has turned from black to grey when we spot 2 figures crossing the fairground. It's them, says Julia, opening the wagon door and letting the warmth out and cold in. She waves and Henry waves back. He looks tired, but happy. The Wanderers return, says Julia as Henry and Will step inside. Everything all right? Yes, nothing to worry about. Did they charge you? Julia asks Will. No, but only thanks to my brother here. Talked a good talk he did, told them what he'd seen, what the lads had done. I think the bloke I whacked is well known to them, so that helped my case. Yeah, and offering them a free shoot whenever they like, laughed Henry. So that's the end to the matter, is it? Julia asks him. Yes, darling, it is, says Henry, pulling Julia into his arms. Tea, Will? I ask. Oh, thanks, Nell. That would be grand, but I need to get back to Sophia. She'll be going out of her mind with worry. I'm already in her bad books and really shouldn't push my luck. Will steps back into the gloom outside and Henry gives a good yawn. Go and get some rest, love, says Julia. Hopefully it'll be a busy day and we'll need you at your best. Me and Julia wash and dress, as relieved as each other that the matter is settled. We have another 5 days left in Wisbeach, and if we can all keep our heads down, there'll be good money to be made. Chapter 13. March 1910. On our final morning in Wisbeach, me and Julia sit in the wagon counting coins. Half-crowns, farthings and shillings lie in tall towers on the table. We record the amounts in Julia's book and scoop the counted piles into a tin. All the cash stays in the wagon. We don't trust no banks with it. Julia's not stupid though. Her tin has a lock and she has a secret hidey hole high in a cupboard, just in case prying eyes come looking. Wednesday was our best day of takings. No wonder, for the shops shut at lunchtime and all the workers spilled out, their earnings burning a hole in their pocket. Kiddies from the local school were brought down for a treat, all with a few pennies and keen to be rid of them in exchange for a bit of fun. It was so busy, it was hard to find a path among the bodies. The kiddies went home for tea, but the grown-ups stayed long into the night. Some even tried to get us to stay open longer than usual, but we were knackered, so there was no chance. We worked non-stop that day, didn't get a bite to eat till after dark, and even then it was in shifts and not a hot meal. None of us had time to cook, so it was a case of bread and cheese and eat on the run. "How's it looking?" asks Henry. "Been a fine week, the look of things. Should make up for us not being at Linmark this year." "Well done, gals," said Henry, kissing us both on the top of our heads. "You nearly done here? There's a lot of packing up to do." "Fancy a bite to eat first?" asked Julia. "I can heat some soup. Might be good to get food in our bellies before hours in the cold." "Good idea," says Henry, joining me at the table while Julia heads to the stove. Henry's legs jiggle up and down as he flicks his spoon against the table. "Calm yourself, Henry. We're in no rush. There's a couple of weeks yet till we're in Norwich." "You're right as usual. I just don't like all that work hanging over me." "You're as impatient as our Nellie," says Julia, shaking her head. My leg starts to jiggle too. Not at the thought of work what lies ahead, but because we'll be soon headed for Norwich. Norwich means Florrie, and I can't wait to see her. We make it to Norwich twice a year, Easter and Christmas. It's a busy old time, and between the fair and Florrie's work in the factory, we don't get many hours together, but what we get, we make the most of. "You excited for Norwich, Nellie?" "Do you need to ask?" I grin at Julia. "I bet Florrie is counting down the days. She can stay with us a night or two if you'd like that." "We'd both like that. I'm just not sure she can get away that long. Mum's not been too good these past couple of years." Julia's face darkens at the thought of my mum. I'd mistakenly thought them friends when we first met, but I get the feeling if Julia never sees her again, it'll be too soon. "Well, it's fine talking about Norwich, but we need to get out of Wisbeach first," says Henry. He puts his bowl to his lips and glugs down his soup. "Come out and help as soon as you're done. We need all hands on deck." It's quite the job getting the shooting gallery down. The sides and roof are heavy, but the canvas comes off first with a bit of jiggling. Julia folds it all into neat squares and packs it into the trailer. Henry takes off the targets and I help him clean them. They're bloody heavy, I can tell you. Thousands of pellets have dented the bright paintwork of the metal animals, but they're still beautiful. Will comes over to help Henry lift the big iron plates and load them onto the trailer. In return, we'll help him pack up his coconut shy, even though he's got a gaff lad helping him. After hours of lifting, packing and storing, we're ready to get back on the road. I always have mixed feelings at these times. It's sad to see the fair being packed away, brightness and fun draining from a town, leaving only sweet wrappers and toffee apple sticks lying on the ground as a clue we were there. The town that was alive with colour and noise becomes grey and ordinary. The river that dazzled with coloured electric lights is now brown and sad. But there's also excitement in the air, for we're moving on. We'll have a couple of weeks in Swaffham at our winter quarters, then on to Norwich. All are excited about Norwich, for the cattle market's one of the best spots we get, and the city folk come out in their thousands to welcome us year on year. I head into the wagon and help Julia pack away the breakables. I sometimes wonder if it wouldn't be easier if we had fewer ornaments and trinkets, but Julia would never have it. She's as house-proud as they come, even though her house isn't a house. For her, the effort of packing and unpacking every few days is worth it to create a home. I'd love to see Mum's face if she ever came to the wagon. She can't even manage to dust a few candlesticks. Henry hitches the horses to the wagon and trailer and we're off. Not at the speed he'd like, for the roads are jam-packed with others doing the same. Kiddies come out and wave, and I wave back, grateful for the coins they've put in our pockets. We're behind Thurston and his long train of wagons and trailers. Steam spews out from his traction engines, and it's hard to see out of the windows for all the white smoke. After a few miles, he turns off towards Norwich, and the air around us clears. It's a grey day, and I begin to understand why Julia's not so keen on the fens. The scenery beyond the window is the same for miles: fields, dykes, sky. The only interesting thing about it today is the windmills, and even they look gloomy, stood all on their own. It's a relief when we reach the winding lanes near our winter quarters at Swaffham. We pull onto the patch of waste ground we call home and unhitch the horses. Henry wastes no time heading into town to look for work. If he can get a couple of weeks' casual labour, it will add a helpful dollop to our coffers. Me and Julia begin the unpacking, carefully taking glass and ceramic ornaments from cupboards and boxes, unwrapping them and polishing them till they're gleaming. Soon the wagon looks just as before. We could still be in Wisbeach if you just looked inside. Outside is different though. All the colourful stalls and rides lie on trailers, hidden beneath canvas blankets and secured with rope. Wagons lie in a circle, and the kiddies are already out playing while their mums spruce up their homes. Some of the men are out fixing up rides, mending broken boards on stalls, or just giving their stuff a good clean. It's useful having a couple of weeks back in Swaffham, for a week-long fair means the stalls and rides get plenty of wear and tear. "You got time to give me a hand?" calls Sophia. "Good timing. Me and Julia have just finished here," I say, and head over to her wagon. "What do you need doing?" "Well, all that mud at Wisbeach has left my stall in a right old state. I could do with some help cleaning it up." "Hand me a bucket," I say, and she grins. Will and Sophia's gaff lad is meeting them in Norwich, so it's just the two of them to get any cleaning and repairs done. I'm glad to help if I can. I like Sophia. She's older than Julia and not half as pretty, but she's got a filthy cursing mouth and makes me giggle plenty. "Where's Will off to today?" "Same as Henry, looking to pick up a bit of work in town." "Looks like you could have done with him here," I say, as she pulls back the canvas to reveal wooden boards muddy and splintered. "Yes, I could. Those bloody local lads did a grand job battering the stall. If it wasn't for Will stopping me, I'd have gone out and beat those little buggers black and blue." I laugh, picturing the scene in my head. Sophia would have done a good job on them, no doubt. She's as strong as any man round here and built like a steam engine, Henry says. We begin scrubbing the wood free of mud, but as we do, it shows up more patches where holes have been kicked or broken bottles have scratched the beautiful paintwork. "Will won't be pleased when he sees this," says Sophia, surveying the damage, hands on her big hips. "Good thing you're helping, or this would take me all day. Julia and Henry are lucky to have you, girl." "I'm lucky to have them." "You don't miss your family?" "No, only my sister, not the others." "How many brothers and sisters you got then?" 8 now, but I've not met my littlest brother." 8? Bloody hell, some people have all the luck." "How come you have no children?" "The Westrop curse, me and Julia call it. We both like to have children, but it's not happened for neither of us. Our fellas blame us, of course, but we reckon it's too much of a coincidence. 2 brothers, no kiddies. Maybe they were fed something rotten when they were kids. Who knows? Can't dwell on it, mind. Got to make the best of things." We continue scrubbing, and I feel sorry for Sophia, for she has a far-away look in her eyes. It must be a double blow, no children and being a fair family. The businesses of show folk are passed down through generations. What will happen to the coconut shy and shooting gallery when they're all gone? Between the mending and cleaning, the 2 weeks in Swaffham fly by. The morning we're due to leave, I have butterflies in my belly and have to make several trips outside to relieve my nerves. As the horses draw us closer to Norwich, the nerves get worse. Every time we go back, I'm both excited and scared. Excited to be seeing Florrie, Nervous I'll be seeing Mum. Not that Mum's come to see me yet, and we've been in Norwich twice a year ever since I've been with the fair. Our wagon passes through streets that grow more familiar. I peer through the window and see kiddies running in and out of yards, all smiles, dirty faces and bare feet. We're slowed by a herd of sheep being moved down the road, making their way to the cattle market. The new trams now seem to go all over the city, and I marvel at the sight, crossing my fingers they don't fly off their rails and bash into us. "You all right?" says Julia. "Must be strange for you every time we come back." "I'm fine," I lie, my belly churning. "I can take you to see your mum and dad one day, if you'd like that." "No," I say. No thank you. They'll be too busy with work to be bothering with the likes of me." "Well, if you're sure, but do say if you change your mind." "I will," I say, knowing I won't. Chapter 14, April 1910. We're eating supper when there's a knock on the wagon door. "I'll get it," I say, jumping out of my seat. I fling the door open and there's no time to take a breath before I'm in Florrie's arms. "Blimey, look at you," she says, pulling away and holding me at arm's length. "You're even prettier than when I saw you at Christmas." "Bloody hell, don't start that. You'll get me blushing and I'm not one to blush. Come in, have some food. That all right, Julia?" "Of course it is." Florrie squeezes round the table that's barely big enough for three. Julia grabs Florrie a plate of food and she tucks into it like nobody's business. She's thin, very thin, like she's not been getting enough good dinners in her. "Would you like seconds?" Julia asks. Florrie blushes, but Julia ignores her red cheeks and ladles more food onto her plate before Florrie can refuse. "How's things?" asks Henry through a mouthful of food. "Not too bad. I'm at the factory all hours, and between that and looking after Mum and Fred, there's not much time for anything else." "Fred's your brother?" "Yes, a darling little chap he is. Got Ellen's cheek, but at least he's sweet with it." "Hey," I say, punching her on the arm. "See what I mean?" she says, and the others laugh. I pretend I'm cross, but I know she's only teasing. "I thought I'd bring Fred to meet you tomorrow, if that's all right with you." "Yeah, that would be grand. Come in the morning, we're not too busy then." "How's your mum?" asked Julia. I'm not sure she really cares, but she's polite enough to ask. "Oh, so. She's not been too well lately, but we muddle through." "What's wrong with her?" I ask. "Don't know. She won't go to the doctor and says she's fine, but we all know she's not. They've cut her hours at the factory, so at least she's getting some rest. She seems to be in a lot of pain, but complains about her lack of work more than any pain, so it's bloody difficult to know what's going on." "Think I should go and see her?" Florrie shuffles in her seat. "I'm not sure about that. Don't know if she's up to visitors." Julia's eye does that twitchy thing it always does when she's angry. I put my hand in hers and she gives mine a squeeze. I want her to know I'm all right, that I don't care whether I see Mum or not. She won't understand though. How could she, after longing for a child so long? The fair's not open yet, but after dinner me and Florrie take a walk round the closed up stalls. "So Ellen, what do you recommend when I come back tomorrow?" "Well, first things first, no one calls me Ellen no more." "But I've never known you as anything else." "All right, you can call me Ellen. Just you, mind." All right, Nellie. Where should I take Freddie tomorrow?" "First, you must come to our shooting gallery. I'll get you in free. Julia and Henry won't mind." "Is that safe for a 4-year-old?" "He'll be all right with a bit of help. Henry only uses air rifles, too spooked by the accidental shootings on other stalls the past few years." "You're not selling this very well." I laugh and punch Florrie again. "Believe me, Florrie, you won't find no shooting gallery safer than Henry's. After that, you need to see Will and Sophia at their coconut shy." "Henry's brother?" "Yep. Next, I'd go to Thurston's. He's got a fancy cinematograph in the agricultural hall this year. Just check what he's showing before you go in. You don't want little Freddie being scared witless and having nightmares. He'd probably enjoy Howden's motorcar track, and Richard's cakewalk is always good fun. Sounds like we'll need the whole day and I've only got a few hours off work. Why don't you leave him with me? So long as he likes me. Don't you have work to do? Yeah, but Mondays is usually quiet, and Julia and Henry love having kiddies around. I'm sure they won't mind. All right, let's see how it goes. He might hate you, of course. I go to punch her again, but she's too quick for me and runs back to the wagon laughing. I'm tired, for the excitement at meeting Freddie kept me awake through the night. When I did sleep, I dreamt of Maud. I hope she don't haunt me forever. It must be because I'm back in Norwich that she's sneaking into my dreams once more. At 9 o'clock, there's a knock at the door and Florrie opens it. Morning, she calls and pokes her head through the opening. Anyone home? Yep, come in, I say. Julia and Henry are out readying the gallery, and it's fun to pretend the wagon's all mine for a while. Florrie turns and I hear her whispering to someone behind her. Fred's feeling a bit shy, she says over her shoulder. I head over to the mantelpiece and take down one of Julia's china dogs. I poke its head round the door and put on my best version of a doggy voice. Wuff, 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 wuff. Is there a boy called Fred around here somewhere? I heard he'd like to see inside my wagon. A giggle comes from behind Florrie's legs. Wuff, 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 wuff. Is that Florrie's bum giggling? Really, Florrie, you should have used the privy before you got here. The giggles turn to splutters. Wuff, 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 wuff. Would the giggling bum like to come and see inside my wagon? It's not Florrie's bum, it's me, cries a little boy stepping out from behind Florrie. A boy? Wuff, wuff. And who might you be? I'm Fred. Pleased to meet you. Who are you? Oh, I'm... Bloody hell, I need to think quick. I'm Waggy. Waggy? That's a stupid name for a dog. Oh, yes, you're right, of course. It was my stupid owner what gave it to me. Would you like to meet her? Silence. She's very nice, wuff wuff, even if she does think of bloody awful doggy names. Through the crack in the door, I see Fred look up at Florrie. She nods her head to show it's safe to come in, and she climbs the steps and walks through the door. Oh, hello. Who are you? Have you met my dog Waggy? I say. Can I hold him? Freddie asks. Bloody hell, I hadn't bargained for this. Julia will go mad if he breaks one of her precious ornaments. Well, I suppose so, but Waggy's very old dog, so you must take care of him. Can you do that? Can you be gentle? Freddie nods. I hand him the china dog and he cradles it in his arms. Why don't you sit down, I say, and lead him to the chair by the fire. He don't take his eyes off the dog, stroking its cold surface as though it were a real dog with real fur. I crouch down beside him. Freddie, I have a friend what makes the most wonderful gingerbread. Would you like some? He looks at Florrie. Gingerbread's like cake, Freddie, only nicer than any you'll have tried. Why don't you have a small bit, and if you like it, Nellie can give you some more. He nods, and I catch him watching me wide-eyed as I pull down a tin and take a chunk of gingerbread from inside. I break off a corner and hand it to him. He holds it to his lips and tickles it with the end of his tongue. Next, he takes a tiny nibble. A smile crosses his face. More? Freddie, that's very rude. How do you ask nicely? Says Florrie. More, please, Nellie? I hand him the rest of the piece and he gobbles it down in 2 mouthfuls. Fancy another? Yes. Yes, please, says Florrie. Yes, please, says Freddie. All right, Freddie, but don't be giving yourself bellyache or I'll be in Mum's bad books. Everyone's in Mum's bad books, he says through a mouthful of gingerbread. I look at him, surprised, and he smiles at me, crumbs falling from his mouth and scattering across the floor. I bend down to pick them up and give him a wink. He smiles, and I know I've won him round. Freddie seems torn between excitement and fear as we walk through the fair. His right hand fills mine, and his left hand fills Florrie's. If anyone shouts, he jumps out of his skin and squeezes our hands hard. I know. Let's see Aunt Sophia and Uncle Will first. I think you'll like them, Freddie, and I'm certain they'll like you. Sophia is polishing the front of her stall when we walk up. She straightens, hands on hips, and gives us a smile. So, Nellie, is this the mystery brother of yours? Yep, this is Freddie. Hello, Freddie, she says. Freddie twists himself round so he's hiding in Florrie's skirt. I crouch beside him. It's all right, Freddie. Sophia is very kind. If we ask her nicely, she might let you have a try with her coconuts. Would you like that? What's a coconut? I look up at Sophia and she hands me one. Here, have a feel of this, I say, taking Freddie's hand and running it across the brown skin. It's prickly and rough, he says. What is it? Well, it's a right magical ball, for inside it has magic potions, what look like milk. Can I try some? Not today, only when there's a full moon. You can throw it though, and if you hit a target, you can win a prize. I can throw it? Yep. Where? How about we let Sophia show you, then you can see if you want to try. Freddie nods and Sophia takes another coconut from her basket, hurling it at the target with a mighty thwap. Me try! That all right? I ask Sophia. Course it is. Come and stand here, Freddie. The intrigue of the coconut is too much for him to resist, and he stands beside Sophia as she shows him where to aim. He picks up the coconut and tries to throw it, but it lands at his feet. Sophia hands him another and holds it with him, helping him put some power behind it. With Freddie distracted, I take the chance to speak to Florrie. He's a lovely chap. Yeah, that he is. Sorry he's been so shy. It takes him a while to warm to strangers. It's stupid, but her words make me sad, for I shouldn't be a stranger to my own brother. Why is he so jumpy? Florrie stands silent. Oh, come on, Florrie. I know what goes on in that yard. You can talk to me. Well, I suppose it's simple, really. With you gone, Mum needed someone to fill your place. And you know what a place that was. She's unkind. Sometimes. More often than not, she ignores him, but he never knows when the meanness is coming. No wonder he's twitchy, poor fellow. At least he's got you. I do my best, but I'm at work so often he's left on his own a lot. It won't be long till I up and leave, and who knows what will happen to him then. We stand watching Freddie, giggling away with Sophia, despite none of his coconuts reaching their target. He bends down for another, and beneath his shirt collar lies a thick layer of grime. His clothes hang off him, and compared to the well-fed, well-run fair lads, he's all skin and bone. But his bright blue eyes sparkle from his face, and I have a feeling he's a survivor. A tough hardy, like me. Chapter 15. April 1910. By lunchtime, Florrie says she has to get back to the factory and asks Freddie if he'd like to stay. Stay, he says, jumping round, full of sugar from the bonbons Sophia gave him. All right, but I'm not sure how to get him home. I'm working till 8 tonight. I could bring him, if Julia can spare me an hour or so. You sure? No, I'm not sure at all. But if spending time with Freddie means going back to the yard, then I don't see I've got much choice. Let me run and check, I say, sprinting over to the shooting gallery. When Julia hears my plan, her face crumples up in a big frown. I'm not sure that's such a good idea, Nellie. I know, but if I don't, Freddie will have to go home now. All right. Well, The only way I'm letting you do that is if you let me come with you. What about the gallery? It's not like we'll run off our feet. If the crowds pick up, someone will lend Henry a gaff lad for an hour or two. I hug her. Thank you. Julia tips my face towards hers. You're my girl, Nellie. I'm not letting you face that bitch alone. Her words surprise me. But what surprises me more is the rush of sympathy I feel towards Mum. She was a bitch to me, wasn't she? But maybe her life left her no choice. I push my thoughts away. I'm being a fool. Julia's the one that cares for me, not Mum. I give Julia a smile and run back to find Fred. Me and Freddie spend a wonderful time wandering round the fair. Business picks up mid-afternoon and I take him with me to help at the shooting gallery. Walk up, he calls, walking back and forth in front of the stall. He's that sweet, he draws the flatties like moths to a flame, putting my patter to shame. When things quieten down, we head off to explore. What would you like to do, Freddie? We could either go on a ride or see if we can find some magic. Magic! All right, I know just the place. We weave through the crowds and I'm careful to keep hold of his hand, for I don't want him wandering off and getting lost. Several of the fair folk ask who my friend is, and I'm proud as punch to tell them he's my brother. It's not long till we're at Madame Yelmer's. Freddie's face fills with shock as she steps onto the stage. Her shiny black hair hangs below her waist and rouge covers her lips. She has a string of chains around her neck and jewels covering her clothes that jangle when she moves. She gives the crowd her patter in a deep, smooth voice, full of big pauses that keep the audience on the edge of their seats. A young girl appears beside her, carrying ropes, chains and handcuffs. The poor young thing must be bloody chilly, for her clothes are that skimpy there's little point her wearing none. The young girl wraps Madame Yelmer in ropes and chains, cuffing her wrists together. Madame Yelmer wriggles around, proving to us she's stuck fast. Count with my beautiful assistant Doreen, wails Madame Yelmer, for I shall break free from my chains in under 30 seconds. I cover my mouth as I let out a little snigger. Doreen? Couldn't they have given her a more exotic name? Maybe Madame Yelmer don't want Doreen stealing too much attention. Poor thing. Ready? Shouts Doreen, arms flung out wide above her head. Yes, scream the crowd. 30, 29, 28, 27. The crowd join in, many of them tripping up over their counting, for they'd struggled to count 30 forwards, never mind backwards. At 4, Freddie's doing an impressive job keeping up with Doreen. No doubt he's a brother of mine. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. The ropes are off, the chains too. She's got 5 seconds to get out of those handcuffs. I know it's all a con, but even I'm willing her on. 4, 3, 2, 1. A roar goes up from the crowd as Madame Yelmer lifts her free hands above her head and twirls them in the air like a dancer. She spins around, her gown flapping out around her, then takes a bow. Doreen takes a bow too, though I'm not sure counting back from 30 deserves much of a clap. Again, says Freddie. Sorry, Fred, don't think I can stretch to another go. How about we find a different ride? He don't answer, just grabs my hand and pulls me through the crowd. He stops beside Elliot's school of boxers. Freddie, I'm not sure Mum will be too happy to find I've taken you to a boxing show. I won't tell. Neither will I say as we move closer. From where we're standing, it don't look like a fair match. There's one man, likely 6 foot, all muscles and brawn. Beside him stands a scrawny creature, not much taller than me, and I'm short for my age. That little chap's going to get a battering. Freddie looks on wide-eyed as the big man throws the first punch. The little one staggers backwards, hands clasped to his eye. Oh, how wrong I was, for the little squirt sure has some fight in him. He charges forward, head-butting the big lad in the chest and knocking the wind right out of him. While the big lad tries to catch a breath, the little one's on him, fists flying so fast they blur in front of our eyes. It don't take long before the big lad admits defeat and roars of laughter fly out from the crowd. We're about to walk away when a young woman steps up, dressed in a man's trousers and shirt. She's not going to fight, is she? Freddie asks. I think she might, I say, as surprised as he is. Well, what can I say? That young girl puts her opponent firmly in his place. Her fists fly, throwing punch after punch till the lad curls up in a corner begging for mercy. Now the crowd go wild. They pull the woman off the stage, lifting her high above their heads, parading her round the stalls and shows, hailing her a hero. I wonder how those same chaps will feel if their own women throw a punch back the next time their husbands go for them. We ever go on Howden's motorcar track, stocks, gallopers, roundabouts, swings, the cakewalk? Freddie bounds round the fair, all endless energy and excitement. At 5 o'clock I buy him a toffee apple and we sit ourselves on the wagon's steps. I'm tired, Nellie, he says. Well, I'm not surprised. I thought I was a lively one, but you're full of beans. It's been a job to keep up. Have you had fun? Freddie grins, all tooth-covered teeth and dimply cheeks. It's been the best day of my life, he says. I put an arm round him and wait for him to finish his apple. Julia walks over, taking off her apron and unpinning her hair. You two ready? She says. Yep, we're both done in. Time for home. All right, just give me a minute to freshen myself up. I'm surprised she's bothering, for no one will be fresh in the yard. But maybe she's as nervous as me. She's got nothing to worry about. Mum wouldn't try to take me back, even if Julia paid her. Right, let's go, says Julia. She's got her velvet coat on and has changed her shoes for ones with a higher heel. A silk scarf covers her hair, but blonde waves tumble down her back like gold cloth. I bet Mum hates her. It's a slow walk across the river to the yard, for Freddie's fading fast. I lift him onto my back and carry him for a while, but he's surprisingly heavy for such a skinny chap, and I can't carry him long. My pace slows as we walk along Oak Street. What a bloody stupid idea it was to come here. We pass Alice's yard, and I'd like to give her a knock, but it would only delay matters. Best get this over with. After 4 years of fair life, stepping back into Queen Caroline's is like seeing it for the first time. I nearly puke with the stink, for I've been spoilt with fresh air too long. The only stink that reaches my nose these days is the smoke from engines, and you get used to that pretty quick. Julia's heel catches on a cobble. Fucking hell, she says, then seeing my surprise mutters, Sorry. I take hold of her hand and the three of us walk through the yard up to my old front door. See you, Nellie, says Freddie, reaching up to give me a kiss. I'll see you again at Christmas. Don't be forgetting me, will you? I'll remember you every day till Christmas comes round. Promise. Good chap. Can you let Mum know we're here? Freddie gives us one last wave before disappearing into the gloom. Mum! Mum! He yells. There's a shuffle of footsteps on the staircase and an old, bent-backed woman leans against the doorframe. Her hair's lost all colour but grey and is even more straggly than I remember. Her cheeks have sunk lower and deep creases cover her face. Mum? Ellen? Actually, it's Nellie now. Mum huffs. What do you want? We dropped Freddie back, so thought we'd say hello while we're here. Thank God Julia's with me, for in front of Mum I feel 6 again. Cat got your tongue, has it, Ellen? Need your pretend mummy to answer for you? I'm Nellie. You'll always be Ellen to me. Don't forget where you come from, girl. You're a Hardy through and through. She's a Westrop now. You saw to that the night we met in the pub. Mum glares at Julia, and maybe I imagine it, but I'm sure beneath the glare she looks sad. Well, you've said hello. Now you can bugger off. Let's go, says Julia. We're not wanted here. I don't know what I was expecting, but a smile would have been nice. Mum disappears back up the stairs, huffing and hacking away with every step. As we cross the yard, I turn back. A man stands in the doorway of our house. It must be Arthur, but he don't look himself. His clothes are hanging off him, his cheeks sunk back like Mum's. The small bit of hair still left on his head is wispy like a baby's. I wave at him. He waves back, but it seems the effort of lifting his arms is too much and he slumps back against the doorway. Your mum didn't look too well, says Julia as we step out onto Oak Street. No, neither did Arthur. Did you see him? I missed that. How old is he now? Must be about 20, but he looks like an old man. Maybe there's sickness in that house. Was Freddie all right? I know Julia cares for Freddie's health, but she'll also be worrying he's passed on an infection to us. It would spell disaster for the fair if he has. Seemed fine to me. Well then, it's most likely living in a rat-infested hovel and eating scraps that's made them unwell. It must have pained Julia to see our house. Her face stayed straight while we were there, but she's so house-proud. The stink and grime couldn't be further from the tidy warmth of her wagon. Come on, let's get you home. I walk beside her down Oak Street, feeling nothing but relief to be escaping the yard once again. Chapter 16, June 1910. We're on the road again, this time to Braintree. It's a fair old hike and we'll be lucky if we do it in less than 6 hours. We don't usually head this far south, but Henry got wind Thurston will be there with his electric vaudeville, and that's guaranteed to draw the crowds. It's evening before we pull up onto the fairground, though it's close enough to the longest day that we'll have many hours of daylight left. It's a smaller setup than we're used to, but that means less competition and hopefully greater earnings. What's going on there? Asked Julia, staring out of the window. Gives a look, I say, squeezing up to her. Looks like a row. There's the fair lot, see, but I don't recognise the fellows they're rowing with. Henry finds us our spot, secures the wagon, and we wander over to see what's wrong. Don't get too close now, he says. It don't look like a friendly meeting to me. We don't want you getting in the way of any flying fists. Whatever they're talking about must be important, for there's work to do, but no one's doing it. It's easy to spot which side is which. The fair folk are dressed down in their work clothes, not expecting to see no one but each other till tomorrow. The men's shirts are worn and oil-stained, caps perched on their heads to keep the sun away while they work. The other group don't look like your average flatties. They're dressed up smart. Suits, ties and funny round heads what don't quite fit their heads. While the fair folk wave their arms in the air, curse words hurled out everywhere, the flatties keep their arms still, voices quiet, faces serious. Oi, Charlie, what's going on? Charlie, Will's gaff lad, is stood near the front and moves back to report what's afoot. There's trouble brewing, no doubt about it. I can see that, says Henry. What's the trouble about? Well, seems like the field has been double booked. Double booked? You sure? I don't think those flatties are liars. They're religious nuts, here to preach the word of God to convert sinners like me. Good luck to them, says Henry, grinning. I giggle. Charlie's a decent enough chap, but he's a light-fingered wooer of ladies, and I can't picture him in a church. You send someone right now to sort this out. Old man Shipley, who runs the carousel, has a voice like a foghorn. It booms across the group and the flatties take a step back. I wriggle further into the crowd, slipping between legs till I can hear the conversation. The leader of the flatties is holding something in each hand. I squeeze even further through the crowd. He's got a big old Bible in one hand and a sheet of paper in the other. This, sir, is a copy of our lease. I assure you, everything is above board. You there, says one of the showmen. Bloody hell, he's pointing at me. Me? Yeah, you. You're Julia's girl, aren't you? Yes, I am. Can you read? Yes. Well, what are you waiting for? He signals to the paper in the flattie's palm. I step forward. The flattie hands over the paper and I try to make out the words on the page. I can read, but I'm not used to fancy words like this. There's unlikely to be anyone else in our group what can do better, so I give it a go. All looks above board, I say, handing the paper back. You sure about that, girl? If she says she's sure, she's sure. Julia steps through the crowd and puts an arm around my shoulder. I can assure you all, this girl has a bigger brain in her head than all of yours put together. You're best off trusting what she says. Sorry, love, says Shipley. We have to be sure, see? I understand, says Julia. I expect her to pull me to the back of the crowd, but she stands beside me, as keen to find out what's going on as I am. She keeps her arm on my shoulder, like a real mum. Now you have assurances from us, we'd like some from you. Show us your own papers, please, says the flattie. Oh dear, our lot don't look best pleased being ordered round by the religious nut. A hum of whispers goes through the group and a young lad is sent off to find the papers. He returns minutes later and hands them over to the flattie. Well, looks like your affairs are in order too. It must be a mix-up on the part of the council. As we're all here now, I don't suppose there's much we can do. Let's try to rub along together the best we can. The show folk don't reply. They wander away from the flattie, grumbling under their breath. As we begin to set up our stalls, it becomes clear we're all squished together closer than we'd like. The religious bunch have an enormous tent up to the left of the fairground. It's hard to move the big sheets of iron from the trailer to our spot, for Will's coconut shies blocking our path. Sorry, Henry, there was nowhere else to put mine. I'll give you a hand with the sheets. It takes all of us to carry the backplate and targets through the tiny gap we've been left. This is an accident waiting to happen, says Henry. Pay close attention to the punters tomorrow now. We don't want no one shooting across the other stalls. Don't worry, my beady eyes will keep watch. I'm sure they will, knowing you, he says, patting me on the back. Me and Julia help lift the canvas onto the frame, and Henry locks away the rifles ready for tomorrow. The fairground feels a bit flat, like the religious nuts have stolen our excitement with their mumbo-jumbo. Maybe you'll discover the meaning of life, says Julia, but Henry's not impressed. Those folk are lucky having time to ponder a higher being. Us ordinary folk just have to get by one day to the next. I'm sure they're harmless enough. We'll see. I step out into the warm June sunshine to relieve myself and splutter in disbelief. Henry, Julia, you've got to come see this. What is it? You'll see. They follow me outside and take a moment getting used to the bright sunshine. What am I supposed to be looking at then? Asks Henry. I don't know how you could miss it, I say. Try looking up. We all look up. Against the bright blue sky, an enormous flag flaps about in the breeze. Henry looks puzzled, unable to read the words painted on it, but Julia claps a hand across her mouth. Don't leave me in suspense, says Henry. What does it say? It says... I try to be serious, not wanting to make Henry cross, but every time I go to speak, another giggle bubbles up. Julia gives me a warning look. It says, prepare to meet your God. You're joking. Sorry, I wish I was. Prepare to meet your God? Flying high above a fairground? What the bloody hell are they thinking? I think hell's exactly what they're thinking about, I say, spluttering again. That's not helpful, says Julia, frowning at me. This is a disaster, says Henry. No, it's not, says Julia. Look on the bright side. Maybe the punters will come to us once they've finished whatever's going on in that tent over there. You think we'll draw the same type of crowd, do you? They're probably rubbing their hands in glee, a captive market of sinners for them to get their hands on. No, it'll put our punters off, you mark my words. Henry storms off to moan with Will, and Sophia appears beside our wagon. You seen it then? She asks. Yeah, Henry's not best pleased. Will neither. I reckon it's funny. I've bet Will £1/2 the novelty factor will draw in more crowds than usual. I hope you're right, says Julia. I prefer living with a happy Henry. He'll be happy, don't you worry, says Sophia. Turns out Sophia's right and wins her bet, much to Will's annoyance. News of the double booking spreads like wildfire, and it's not just the town folk drawn in. Buses are laid on from surrounding villages and people flood the fair, their pockets jangling with coins. We work day and night to meet their demand for a good time. Flatties with Bibles under their arms prowl round the stalls, but the punters mock them and see them as a bit of fun. The religious nuts don't find it fun and make sure they're back in their big tent before the sun sets. Our last evening is especially busy, for it's the last chance for folks to have a giggle at the flag flying high above us. Coloured electric lights shine from stalls and kiddies are allowed to stay up late and join the fun. There's a good bit of liquor been drunk by the punters and a few are getting rowdy. An older lady, dressed in fine clothes, draws my eye. She's stumbling from stall to stall, a gaggle of young lads following her. She looks respectable, but her mouth isn't. Needs a good clean out, I'd say. Bloody hell, what's she doing? The crowd, what was at the shooting gallery, is taken with her, and I follow them to see what the fuss is about. Poor woman, looks like she should be in the loony bin. She lifts her arms wide in the air and spins round and round till she stumbles into one of the gaff lads. Her hands stroke his jacket, and she tries to give him a smacker on the lips. He pushes her away, but not before his friends have had a good laugh at his expense. Now she starts running round the circle what's formed around her. Oh God, someone needs to stop her. Mums cover their kiddies' eyes as she runs from side to side, lifting her skirt and showing off her knickers. Wild cries are coming from her mouth like she's an animal. Henry walks up beside me. Why is she doing that? I ask him. Either drunk or mad's my guess. She's making a right bloody fool of herself. That she is. I'll try and stop her. Henry walks in the middle of the circle and tries to grab her arm, but she turns and slaps him. I don't know whether to laugh or scream as she takes off her knickers and begins chasing Henry with them. Bloody hell, poor chap don't know what to do. He runs from her and the crowd roars with laughter. Of course, this encourages her even more, and she starts chasing other folk, spinning her knickers around her head like a lasso. Henry makes the most of her attention being elsewhere and runs back to me. Come on, into the wagon. I don't like how this is going. Fingers crossed someone's called the law. Well, that's not a sentence I ever thought I'd hear him speak. He grabs my hand and leads me to the wagon. On the way, we stop and close up the gallery. There's a bigger show in town than ours now, and the way the crowd are riled up, it's better safe than sorry. Julia's already returned to the wagon and is watching the action, face pressed up to the window. "She gave you a right run for your money," she says as we head inside. "It's not funny." "It is a bit." I can't tell if Henry's mad, but his lip starts to twitch, and before we know it, he's rattling the ornaments with his mighty laugh. "Maybe she was preparing to meet her God by lassoing him with her drawers," he splutters. "What a strange visit this has been," I say. That sets us off again. We have tears streaming down our cheeks and my belly hurts from laughing. The police do come, but the woman puts up a good fight. It takes 3 of them to cart her off. The crowd boo the law, for they want the show to go on. As I lie in bed, I picture the woman, mad as a hatter, and hope our paths never cross again. Tomorrow we move on. I think we'll all be glad to see the back of Braintree for a while.